Good evening, gentlemen. I'll call to order the meeting of the Merrimack Planning Board for April 16th. Let me remind everyone to sign in on the clipboard and turn on the microphone. Make sure you speak clearly into them. By way of announcement, our next planning board meeting after tonight is May 7th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in this room. Let me appoint Nelson into a voting position for, let's see, Mike Redding. And that gives us a board of 5, more than enough for a quorum. Item 2 on our agenda is our Planning and Zoning Administrators Report. Robert, anything to report?
Nothing tonight, Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions by members of the staff by the board for members of the staff? None? Then we will move on from our Planning and Zoning Administrators Report. Item 3 on our agenda is Merrimack Parcel A LLC as the applicant and owner. This agenda item is a continued review of an amendment to the previously approved mixed-use site plan for Phase 1 of the Merrimack Park Place project. We'll let the rest of this introduction be read into the record. The applicants requested a continuance to May 21st, 2019, and authorizes an extension to the 65-day decision clock under RSA 676:4. What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the applicant's request to continue to May the 21st, 2019 at 7 p.m. in this room with no further notice to abutters.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 5-0-0 to deal with that. So that's continued. Item 4 on the agenda is Kinsley Osgood Barnard as the applicant and owner. It is agended for a continued review and acceptance of a consideration of waiver of full site plan review for a dog daycare grooming boarding business. Let the rest of the agenda item be read into the record. The applicant has withdrawn the application and will resubmit a revised design proposal at a later date. Therefore, no action is required of the board. That brings us quickly to item 5 on our agenda, which is 702 Daniel Webster Highway LLC as the applicant and owner. Conceptual discussion of a potential site plan for approximately 16,080 square feet of commercial, office, and retail restaurant space. The parcel is located at 702 Daniel Webster Highway in the C2 General Commercial District, Tax Map 7E Lot 23-1. It is Case Planning Board 2019-10. Robert, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
No, I just defer to Mr. Ross. And
Excellent.
Mr. Chairman, interrupting, sorry. What happened to Kinsley Osgood Barnard?
They withdrew that.
What?
They withdrew it.
Oh, they withdrew it. Oh, okay. I thought it took some action by us. I'm sorry.
Nope.
Okay.
For an applicant withdrawal.
And the other thing, for the record, this case number that we're about to, okay, never mind. Never mind.
Okay. So with that, gentlemen, although we've had the pleasure of your company a time or two before, introduce yourselves again for the record and tell us what you got on 702 Daniel Webster Highway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Ross, and this is my business partner, Joel Sikala.
Chris, can you touch your microphone just to make sure it's
Yep.
on?
You guys hear me okay?
Or pull it a lot closer. Yeah, it's definitely
How's
on.
that?
Better.
Yeah. As you guys know, we own Synergy Self-Storage here in Merrimack. We came across a piece of property, which is the property we're going to discuss, 702 Daniel Webster Highway. We had made the decision originally to buy this property and take advantage of the recent approval that was done with Greg Michael for the contractor yard. And we were going to lease that out and basically, own it as just rental property. But we started evaluating the plan, and we started looking at contractor yards and how they operate, and it's really not appealing. They're kind of messy. So we started to explore other options for the property, and we came up with a couple of ideas, and one of those ideas we like. We actually met with community development and had a good conversation, and we just kind of wanted to talk to the board to get their feeling on it. The plan that you guys have shows 2 buildings. One is 120 feet by 80 feet. It's titled commercial offices with storage. That's mainly what we're going to talk about tonight. And then there's a second building where we were thinking something on the lines of commercial retail with a residential apartment above. And I just want to explain something on that. I tend to like a residential apartment somewhere on the property because somebody's keeping an eye on the property throughout the days and nights. And I know this from experience, many, many years, that does have value. So I guess we kind of hit a crossroads when we were looking at doing what we wanted to do in the back. We've had in our business a handful of customers that
This is, everybody has a copy of this, right?
Yeah, we've got everything,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
we have that's, pretty much it. We have had a couple, a handful of customers that are trying to build a business. They've got an office out of their home, they've got a storage unit in our facility, and they're outgrowing it. And we don't allow office use in our storage facility as much as I think they would like to have it. There is no electricity in our storage units, and nor do we want people working out of a storage unit. So their next step in trying to build their business is to find something that gives them the storage they need and gives them some office space also. So that's primarily what we'd like to build in the back. It's basically, 10% office, 20% office in the front with a nice entrance, nice windows, nice facade that you see from the road. And when you drive around back, it would be an overhead door, not a loading dock. We don't want any loading docks. We don't want, tractor trailer trucks coming in and out. But we do need UPS and FedEx and the daily deliveries that we see in our facility able to deliver to these businesses. So when talking to community development, they did make mention that, typically this is something that you would see as an industrial condo type thing. But, we're not looking to house some sort of manufacturing company that's, 80% of the floor space is manufacturing and 20% is the office. We're looking to cater to somebody that's going to, have 20% office, have the rest of the space in the back as storage, and, nothing outside with the exception of maybe a company truck or two. But no, no sanders, no piles of wood, no eyesores, if you would. The property would be, manicured and taken care of. So we just kind of wanted to talk to you further about that. We do have another conceptual because we have been playing with this.
Is it all right to pass this out?
Of course it is.
We found that this plan is actually advantageous for a few reasons, and we do like this plan better. Again, this is our own plan. We haven't had an engineer put this together or put this on paper yet. We don't want to spend that money until we get some sort of a good feeling from the board as to, where we are.
And this is essentially the same layout. It's just a little bit cleaner. There's not the all the pavement around the building. This gives us a little more green space. I think it's just a little bit of a cleaner layout, and it gives us room for in the back for, even if a fire truck needed to get back there, turn around, it's a little more open back there to allow for that. So.
Okay. Thank you for presenting the couple of designs. Is there more information that you want to share, or you want to kind of begin the discussion back and forth? Or?
Yeah. We're just looking for feedback to see where how the board feels about it. What kind of if somebody has any
Sure.
cares or concerns or.
Okay. So I'll offer my thoughts first. I think a couple of things. Your Synergy Self-Storage and the barn building in front with Vision Care Center just represents a very attractive property. It really speaks well of you and your reputation for how you take care of places that way. And notwithstanding the access road and our discussion about that stuff. But there's no question that you guys run an attractive business, that you care about what it looks like. So when you say you don't want eyesores and you don't want outside stuff, your track record speaks for itself. And you have credibility in that regard, where another applicant, I might be like, well, put it on note on the plan, promise me, put up some signs. But I know that you guys mean what you say in that regard. I also agree with you 100% that there's a bit of a niche market there for people who are growing a small business and are a little bit too big for what you had before, but not quite big enough to do some other kind of a thing. And I think that you're in a unique spot to find those clients, where if you didn't own both businesses, you wouldn't know the guys that were outgrowing self-storage and were ready to take that step to the next place. So you've got a real unique ability, I think, to fill this space with those clients, because you'll find them in your business. So I like that a lot. The residential that you mentioned today as being kind of a caretaker's unit seems to fit with at least one avenue where we could consider a single residential unit on the space. If you were talking about having a little bit more apartments on there, we'd be kind of like, well, I don't know what that means or how to combine those things. We wrote into our master plan the idea of having compact multi-use development and commercial, a little bit of storage, fitting these pieces together on a compact site and being creative about it. It's kind of a concept that we intentionally planned for. And so you fit well into that. So the choice between the two options, as far as I'm concerned, I think, the fire department seems to have a preference to be able to drive around all the way around a building. But frankly, if they were satisfied with the one that doesn't drive around, it wouldn't trouble me to see that way, that it proposed that way. I think that the initial plan that we had, even without fully knowing who might move in there, you can look around it and say you're probably not going to be short on parking. You got a lot of spaces around it. And usually we got to know what those uses are, so we can do a calculation and figure that out. But I'm pretty confident just by looking at it in the first one that there's no real question about parking. It looks like some spaces there's fewer spaces in the bottom one, and maybe that requires a little more knowledge about who's moving in so that there can be a calculation. But even then, it looks like you've got 40 spaces or more. Is that right? Do you know how many spaces are on these?
28. 56, I think.
56 on the new one,
On the new one.
and even more than that on the old one. So
Yes.
yeah, if you're at 56, then yeah, you're not going to be short of spaces.
That's what I think it says.
You know if there's?
I
No,
don't
it's not
think
that
there's quite,
1, 2, 3.
yeah, there's a little, I think about 44, 45, somewhere around that area.
We haven't
Yes.
striped the back areas on each of those two buildings, because again, this is just preliminary, but we do have the room to add parking should we need. But
If
again,
you're in that 40, 45, you've
Right.
got more than you're
Yeah.
gonna. So what do you envision? Maybe 4 tenants in each building or so, something like that?
Actually, we're thinking we're gonna probably build the box and then subdivide it as they come, because we don't want to tear down what we build. But we're, as we outlined in that narrative, these are the kinds of tenants that we're thinking.
It's tough to say how much space each one of those might need.
Yeah.
It's like Chris said, it's gonna depend on the tenant, really. But currently we have one woman who just started an online business, and it's been actually fascinating to watch. And
Yeah.
in the space of she was there 3 months, and she
yeah.
went from a 10 by 10 storage unit up to a 10 by 35.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
really
Tripled
good,
in
yeah.
size.
And
and
she
then
could
some.
really use a little more space, so, that's good news. That's a home-based business right here in Merrimack, so.
No, good for her. I love
Yeah.
it when someone gets an idea for a small business and
Yeah.
it's a little bit unique and it
Me
really
too.
does take off. And boy, we've seen all kinds of things from people that have swimming lessons in their garage and some kind of a pool that does some things. And I'm more power to them. If they can make it work, I think it's cool. One person's business was, I forget exactly what it was called, but it's basically teaching people to do artwork and coloring for stress relief and relaxation. And there was a benefit to it, and they thought they had clients. So I love seeing a story like that where you're like, wow, I didn't even know that could work, but somehow somebody makes it work. Zentangle, that's what it was called. That's right. So I assume that in this lower one where you've got that bit broader area paved in the back, and those turnaround areas are intended to show how a truck or a bus or fire truck or something would be able to maneuver if it had to.
Correct. Yeah, and we didn't stripe any spaces behind the lower building there, as Chris said, because even though there would be room there, you know, we would like to be able to leave that open too, just in case for a, you know, UPS truck or something to be able to come in there and turn around.
So both buildings have essentially bay doors in the back?
Well, the one on the top does, that's a definite because it sets off the road. The facade of the front will have nice windows and siding and what have you, but the one on the front, I'm not sure. You know, we actually put out a feeler on the 2 Merrimack forums, I want to say about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was about 3 weeks.
And we actually asked the public, you know, we told them we were analyzing a piece of property that we recently purchased, and we were just curious as to what the townspeople felt that was needed in this town. And
About 500 responses.
500
So
responses.
gluten-free cupcakes in a pink building?
Yeah. So we got a lot of interesting ones. We actually made a little spreadsheet. We get everything all, you know, broken up so that, you know, should we need to go back to that.
I cut the Facebook cord, so I don't even know what
Yeah,
people in the
well,
forum are
right
saying
behind
about
you.
anything
Yeah.
anymore. About 6 months ago, I was done with it.
But to answer your question, the front building, we would like to leave that open-ended and ideally have some retail in there, or some kind of retail customer, but it's kind of up in the air at this
Yeah,
point.
and we have, you know, we are talking to 2 or 3 different various people, and again, like Joel said, you know, we just want to see which direction this goes in, but obviously we would have to make a decision before we start spending money with an engineer and getting stuff put on paper, so.
So the only real comment I have about that, obviously I'm in favor of you guys figuring out what works for your potential tenants and all of that. You've got, you know, a 60-foot wide paved area behind the front building and no parking spaces striped on it. So if it looks like it'd be suitable for trucks.
Mhm.
And if there aren't going to be trucks, then does that become parking spaces, or does it
Correct.
just go
Yes,
away
it does.
altogether?
It
or-
does. It does. The reason why Joel did this was because at the time he put this plan together, we were on board with just keeping it all one use, you know, as the small, so that's why we did it like this. But if we had retail, commercial in the front, then clearly we would add more parking in that back lot to make sure it facilitates that build.
Have you had contact with the neighbors to the north?
Yes,
the two
actually,
residentials?
we have. We've been in steady contact with all 3 of our neighbors, and they have been wonderful. We have had no problems. Each of them needed a little favor here and there. We took care of it, and we've got good relationships with everybody. We've talked
Yeah,
to
I
them
see
about
one of them has their barn on your property, so I guess
Yep.
that was their favor.
Yeah, yeah.
A little bit of leverage there. I
Yeah, a
guess,
little
yeah.
leverage, but yeah, we've got a good relationship with everybody, and they're all for, without complaints as to what we want to do, so.
Excellent. That's very helpful with the residentials because
Absolutely.
usually there's a buffering requirement in the regulations to
Yes.
come and separate those things, and based on the amount of lot coverage that you're proposing, you'd probably be asking for some relief from that buffer requirement.
Mhm.
I believe we have the 10 feet
Do you?
scaled up, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you've got the space and you're going to keep it, then it would be less of an issue. But
Yeah.
either way, typically when these come before us, the neighbors are up in arms and saying how terrible it'll be to live
Yeah.
next to something that wasn't
Yeah.
the deer and the trees that had been there before.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But
for decades,
yeah,
yeah.
but you know they saw the for sale sign on it too. If they
Yeah.
wanted to keep it deer and woods, they could have. So that's you're immediately next to the bowling alley to the south, correct?
Correct.
Very good. I don't know, other folks, comments or?
Mr. Chairman, I think you've covered everything as far as I'm concerned.
Hardly would do that.
I just
Nelson?
had a couple things that occurred to me as we went. One of them was that buffering issue, and you're aware of it and, you know,
Correct.
you're
Yes,
gonna
we are.
take care of it. When you spoke of it, you spoke of 3 residential properties that are to the north. And there's another, so I guess it's northwest. There's a fairly large chunk that seems to sort of wrap around your property and narrows necks all the way down to a little bitty entrance on Route 3. Is that really an accessible entrance to that piece of property?
I don't think so. That's owned by, I believe, the condo association, the Maplewood condos, and it's separated from their main parcel by the utility
Power.
easement.
Yeah. Does the utility actually own that property, or do they have easements?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure, but it's
yeah.
part of the Maple Ridge condo, is what I think I heard you
Yes,
say.
yeah.
They are
Yeah.
listed, yeah.
Yeah.
And then just to clarify, when I said the 3 residentials, there's actually 2 residential abutters on the
Okay.
right, and then you've got the bowling alley on the left.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there isn't another house there that is off the map? It's-
Well, there is.
There
There's
is,
on the
but
other
it's
side
on
of this,
her-
there's like a shared driveway here.
Yeah.
On this side of the shared driveway, there is another residence over here, yes.
But her property
not in
line
a
comes
butter.
off of the driveway there.
Oh, okay.
So
It's not in a
He's in a butter of a
Not in
butter.
the butter.
I'm with you now.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
no
There-
problem.
There are 3 houses. That's,
Yeah.
that's what I had
Yeah,
thought.
they show on the aerial, it's 7E25 is that
Yeah.
third one.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is you're proposing a curb cut on Route 3. And that falls under the jurisdiction of the state of New
Correct.
Hampshire.
There
DOT.
is an existing curb cut. But it's actually on the other side of the property, so we did speak to the DOT
Yeah,
about just relocating it from one side to the other side. So they are aware of that. They had some questions, engineering questions, but obviously it's too preliminary to get into those kind of
yeah,
details with
well,
them.
I just wanted to be sure you knew
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you had to go to get that permission, that we
Yeah.
have to go with what they want as far as that's concerned. And one other thing. There was a line, these 3 properties, are they on separate lots? There's 3 residentials to the
They are.
northeast.
Yes, 3 separate lots, yes.
They're on 3 separately owned lots. Okay, one has no frontage on
Correct.
Route 3, but it must have an access way through there. Is that right?
Yeah, this is a shared, this easement here kind of goes, it must be
shared
about
driveway
20 feet
sitting
on
on the boundary line.
either lot and into
Yeah.
the back there, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And the one other thing I just wanted to ask you, that when you come to us with as finished a plan as you can get.
Yes, and
Uh,
we're trying to, that's one of the things we're trying to address now is
Okay.
all these little things that could potentially come up.
Okay, last time we had a lot of,
That was a big project.
Little
lot of-
continuances.
yeah,
and move
a
forward.
lot of continuances, and I think we'd be better inclined to
Yeah.
approve something that's
We
Done.
agree.
and it's had its in-house engineering review
Mhm.
before we get to review it.
Right,
And
and,
those-
and really that was probably the main impetus for having this meeting here is because of what we went through there. We want to
Yeah.
make sure that everybody's on board from the beginning.
Yeah.
So there's no,
We like that.
Thank you
Yep.
for
We
that.
like that.
Are all the rock walls on the plan already in place, or are those to be constructed?
those are I wouldn't call them a rock wall, but there's a line of rocks there that is
Okay,
in
so
place,
it's,
yeah.
The remains of a rock wall.
yeah, some kind of
Yeah.
remains of one.
The back wall is in decent shape, but the rest of the walls are,
Mm.
like he said, just all over the place, so.
Yeah.
If they fit into your plan for how you would do the landscaping around there, you'll probably have more than a few cobbles that come out of the development of the lot that you could rebuild those walls and make them look nice if it fit in with your plan. Obviously, we don't regulate rock walls, and you can choose to do what you want, but they are kind of New England-y, and they carry a little bit of sentiment for everybody to want to see them continue and preserved or restored where they can, and you'll gain some support from people that are thinking of the aesthetics if you treat those walls pretty well. Your choice. Nothing that
Yeah.
we.
Yeah, I mean, they would definitely have to be reconstructed as, from the state they're in right now, that's for sure.
Very good. Are there things that you have in your plan that you wanted to make sure we talked about and addressed, that you were concerned about how we'd approach it, or?
No, really, the main issue was we just wanted to make sure that our intent here, as we kind of laid out, that fit within what the board felt would be a good fit for the site.
So, yeah, all the feedback that I've offered is, I can't think of too much more to add to that. We don't necessarily consider and approve your signage and your sign package, but think that through with the department to know what you're able to have that gives you the ability to deal with multiple tenants who might want different things on a sign or a marquee, and how big it can be and where it can be positioned and whether that suits your needs and desires for all of that. That can be a bit limiting if you end up with 5 or 6 internal tenants and one external marquee sign that you have to manage and deal with.
Can I ask the chairman, does this have town water, town sewer?
It does, right? On water and town
Yes, it
sewer.
does. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
suspected it might way up in that area.
Yeah, I thought it would. I thought it was, but I wanted just to put it on the
I
record.
think he said so in his application, in his conceptual. I think it says that in there. I read that somewhere. There was town water.
There is an existing, there's sewer there, but then there's also on this plan here, there does show there's an existing sewer line. I guess that was as a result of the contamination from the St. Gobain next door. They had to bring the water into these houses here. So
Oh.
that line is
Oh,
there.
that's very, yes.
And that was another
So that's
reason
marked
for,
a sewer line, not a water
That's a
line.
good point to bring up.
yeah, that was another one of the,
Deciding factors.
Yeah, in this site here, as far as from a residential use, it really didn't lend itself to anything residential with all that going on next door, so.
From this, after having talks with the neighbors, the reports from their sites are unbelievable. And, it's not something that we're looking to put residential on, so.
If I could, Mr. Chair, real quick,
Yes, please.
on that note, we have a biweekly activities meeting where the departments get together to kind of talk about what's going on, active construction projects. And I mentioned that you guys are coming forward with this, and Ken Conity with the sewer department mentioned something about that sewer line. You may want to reach out to him to see if it's going to be any concern or problem for you guys when you go to engineer this.
Ken? Okay, yeah.
Or at the wastewater facility.
So, there may be some need, as you plan this out, figure out exactly how you describe the activities so that when you have commercial space with basically storage space, but the only thing that stops somebody from doing work in the storage space is some rule or regulation or note on the plan or controls that you put in there.
Right.
If-
We are aware of how the regulation does spell out for the C2 district, how it limits, I believe it's 20% of the floor space to incidental manufacturing for something that goes on in that unit, and that is something that obviously we would strictly enforce there.
Yep.
We don't, as Chris said, we don't intend to have anybody come in and set up a metal fab shop. That's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
that's not what we're all about.
Sometimes it isn't as much as of a metal fab shop or some of the things like the more traditional kinds of industrial, but I don't know, I was thinking in terms of like a printing business, but that's kind of old school too. Nobody prints anything anymore. But you may have some things that technically qualify as manufacturing, but don't look like anything traditional. People that set up computer networks or whatever will have a warehouse full of their equipment and supplies and things, and then somebody's assembling it and configuring it and doing some work on site, and
I guess that does.
maybe that's okay. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not saying that's
there,
wrong.
we do have one customer, one storage customer who's actually does like reupholstery and
Yep.
fabrics, window treatments and whatnot. And I know he currently works out of his home, as most of these people do. And I think he does do a little bit of that in his garage. So I'm not sure. I guess I wouldn't call that manufacturing, but reupholstery.
So I don't have any kind of objection to that kind of business fitting in here. I don't know how it fits in with regulations, but to me, an auto upholstery shop or something like that is a fairly non-toxic, non-dangerous, non-hazardous, non-noisy use. Yeah, there's going to be cars that come and go and a bay door that people pull in, but if there was a desire for that kind of thing. The other comment is as to your current tenant and what he does at his home. Shh.
Yeah.
The description for the apartment and what that role is, and that person has to be the caretaker on site, and it's never a market rental kind of a thing. You want to lay all of that out and have notes or some kind of a plan for how you know what that apartment will be used for, and that it's not basically just general residential, put it on the market for $1,500 a month and see what happens. It's somehow connected to the use of the property, either the caretaker for the general management of the place or one of the business owners who has the desire to combine their functions that way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's not something that we're sold on yet. We just know from experience with our site that when the lights go out and businesses close down, people still drive in, and they're typically not there to do anything but hang out in their cars and, do something that they're not supposed to be doing. And, it's when you're sitting on your phone looking at the cameras, and you're a half an hour away, 40 minutes away, or an hour and 10 minutes away, it drives you crazy, and you don't want to keep calling the police. So I like the idea of potentially having somebody living on site to take care of the property and keep an eye out.
Yeah. So think about site lighting, because obviously site lighting will keep the ability to see who's out there and doing that, but also you got to control the site lighting, make sure it's not bothering the neighbors and making it lit up all night long. If you use security cameras, which you probably would, you're probably going to have to figure out, well, how much lighting do I need to make the cameras function correctly, and point in the right direction and all of that. And I encourage you to, we don't regulate security cameras yet, but it's on our plan for a rewrite of our regulations to think about how we would do that. But for your benefit, if it makes sense for your business to think about how you would deal with security and cameras and things. You're right. I mean, everybody from, teenagers with a 6-pack of beer to who knows what are going to look for a place where you're out of the road site and you could park and do whatever.
Yeah.
And so, any business like this, not just this, suits that possibility, and you want to be able to prevent that.
So, if we could, I guess before we leave, if we could get some kind of direction from the board as far as how we would term this, could we get some kind of language that this is what we would call this place, so it doesn't end up being referred to as an industrial manufacturing type of facility? How, to include, say, these types of businesses.
Yep. Robert, can you give us a little bit of a rundown on some of the choices of what's allowed in this zone? And we're in what, C3?
C2.
C2.
So permitted uses in C2 are retail or personal service type uses. Along those lines, retail sales, including services of construction materials, no fabrication or manufacturing except incidental to and on same premises with such retail sales, provided that it's limited to 20%, as Joel said, of the floor area. Business, professional office, like lawyer's office, with things like those. Says research and development on lots of 5 acres or more. It doesn't really go here. Restaurants, cafes, or other food or beverage type uses. Parking lots, hotel, motel, churches, co-locations on cell towers. By special exception, there are accessory uses to those I just mentioned. Any residential uses, public facilities, sale or storage of new and used cars, commercial recreation and entertainment, and gasoline, automobile service and repair.
I guess one concern we have is there's a couple of people we're talking to, and one of them happens to be an HVAC business, where he needs literally 2 offices, a bathroom, and storage space in the back for his stuff. An electrician. would be another one. So I just, tradesmen, if you would. So I'm looking to personally, not you, but I'm personally looking to find out if, a business like that would be suitable for, I guess, I would title this as a small business center.
Yeah, that's a good, I like that.
Small, a
So
small
within our regulations, those kinds of uses, if they're not manufacturing the HVAC or the others, Robert, would that fit into commercial
I guess I would
or
need,
retail?
yeah, I would have to try to figure out how I could shoehorn it into something. The problem is, as much as everything does work, if I don't have the specific thing to shoehorn it into, it's got to go for variance relief, even though it makes perfect sense if I don't have something I can squeeze it into. So I'd have to really look at it and see how I can make it fit something to
Right,
try to.
and
yeah.
that's something that, we're concerned about because, if we had to take that on as, with a case-by-case basis, let us forget the expense, but the time involved, we'd be chasing our tails.
So I get what Robert's saying, and it's kind of more, less about interpretation and more about sort of just being trapped by what the regulations say.
Yeah.
The approach, the advantage that you have, though, is you've currently got the potential for variance on a contractor's yard, which, as you pointed out, is a disaster. It's a mess, it's horrible, it's an eyesore,
It
it's
really is.
noisy, it's messy.
It is.
It's whatever. So if you had to get some relief from the ZBA, you can come and say, I'm going to replace that with this. Isn't that better? Isn't that an upgrade over what the choices are? Now, ZBA makes their own choices and decisions. We don't make them for them except for Lynn.
But as Robert said, if it makes sense, then you've got a good
You
shot
get
at
that
doing it.
relief. You got a good shot. at getting
Is the
relief.
board recommending that we go to the ZBA?
So the first thing you need, so Robert's role as the planning and zoning administrator means that he makes a choice of whether something fits into what the regulations say.
Okay.
Or whether it doesn't and it needs a variance. And so you gotta let him have his chance to analyze it.
Okay.
If he thinks that you're outside what's allowed, then go get that variance. And I don't think that you'll have that much trouble doing it if it makes sense. But yeah, I mean, if you come to us and Robert's saying, I don't think this fits within the zone, any approval that we give is gonna be contingent on you going to get that same variance.
Right.
So,
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
so, the ZBA is as fair-minded folks as you'll find.
Yeah,
and-
yep.
And
Hands down.
they'll take a look at it. I haven't heard anything that would strike me as being a red flag that would be an obstacle for you in front of the ZBA. Of course, again, we don't, except for Lynn, who sits on both boards, I don't speak for them and can't offer up any decision-making, but doing something very useful on the property with the model where you've got a demand for it, that you're building it for a very customized need and purpose, seems to make a lot of sense, and you can build a ZBA variance argument around that. There's statutory criteria you gotta meet, but you're on the right track, and
Okay.
I don't think that you would run into a wall with that.
Okay.
Now, I think considering it to be self-storage, which we could by, special exception or conditional use permit?
It's conditional use, right?
Conditional use permit, is something that could be within the planning board's purview, but from your other business what self-storage is. It's open to the public to come and rent some space and store my old junk that I don't want in my basement anymore. This, when you're combining it with someone's use for office and all of that, it really isn't quite self-storage anymore, to look at what you're trying to do over here. I get that it kind of grew out of self-storage for the clients. It would take a little bit of elastic to look at how to stretch the definition around that to call it self-storage once you get over here. But I don't think that you need to. I think that if you go to the ZBA and you say, here's what I want to do, I'm going to have exactly what you said, an potentially an HVAC contractor, and they're going to store the units, and they're going to have an office, and then they're going to load a boiler or an air conditioner into the truck and go install it in Bob's house. That's what this business looks like. I don't think they're going to have any problem with looking at that and saying, yeah, that's fine here. It's a permitted.
That's if Robert can't find a way to fit it into our existing regulations, and he
Okay,
may.
so.
How do you like your coffee, Robert?
So,
So-
we're on record here.
So let him
Okay.
do his
So
thing
are
first.
you saying that this could turn into a case-by-case situation with
No,
the
no, I
ZBA?
think that you could come to
Okay.
the zoning board and say, at one time,
Okay,
I
okay.
want to have these units available for people who are
An array.
plumbers and
Okay.
electricians and
Exactly.
HVAC and the kinds
Okay.
of people who do this kind of work.
Okay.
And then if if you listed plumbers and electricians and HVACs and you turn around and then somebody says, well, I'm a, automobile upholsterer, close enough.
Right.
Same kind of use, same kind of description.
Okay.
Or someone says, I install, some other feature of a house other than plumbing and electric and all of that. I
Yeah.
do sheetrock. I want to do. same
Basically
thing.
a service business.
Yeah, I mean, for our own benefit, we want to have a somewhat limited scope,
Yeah.
and so it's not open-ended. It helps us really in the long run to do that anyway, so.
So watch out for the potential that you get someone whose business requires storage of hazardous chemicals, like, even like a pool contractor is going to have all sorts of chlorine and bromine and all sorts of things that they use for their pool business. And if you have that, you've got to think through, well, what does that mean for my building? Does it leak? Does it drain? Does it need air ventilation? Does it need whatever? And if you want it, then plan for it and build it. But if you haven't planned for it and build it, don't try and jam it in there afterwards and say, well, it'll probably be okay, because it generally won't.
Okay.
And some of the businesses, you won't even recognize always which one of them has some kind of a chemical use or need that wasn't all that intuitive. Printing businesses, talked about that, probably not ever coming, but paint shops, I don't know, there's all
Okay.
sorts of things with chemicals.
Okay.
We seem to be running into it with doggy daycares and
Yeah.
all sorts of things. So the main thing to watch out for is making the decision whether your buildings will have floor drains or not have floor drains, because floor drains will accept anything that spills into them. And if you have them, then we would be very strict on watching out for your chemicals and how they're stored. If you don't have floor drains and something spills on your floor, you got to clean it up. Not a planning board problem. But don't run it into the sewer and out to the water treatment plant, because then that is something we care about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wouldn't be signing up for anybody with chemicals.
Yep.
So,
Sometimes a car detailing business, or, you run into it where you're like, oh, I didn't even realize.
yeah, yeah,
Who knows what it would be that,
yeah.
someone stores on site. I can't tell you how many we've encountered. We're like, oh, wait, that's a battery. It has acid in it,
Yeah.
Who knows? So, anyway,
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
thank you. So you got all the
Thanks for
questions
coming
that you need?
Yep.
As a conceptual, requires no action by us. For the sake of the formality, does any member of the public wish to weigh in? Seeing none, we've had our public hearing. We'll close that, and then we'll move on from this item and look forward to seeing you again when you've got your plan ready for
Have a good night.
Thank you.
consideration.
Good night.
Great.
Item 6 is discussion and possible action regarding other items of concern. Does anyone have any discussion items for tonight? Seeing none, we have the approval of our minutes of April 2nd, 2019 on our agenda. What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we accept the minutes as printed.
Is there a second? Second by Nelson. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay. That makes it a 4-0-1 with Lynn abstaining vote to approve those minutes. Item 8 on our agenda is to consider adjourning.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second for Alistair's
Second
motion?
that.
Second by Nelson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 5-0-0 to vote to adjourn. Thank you for the work, and don't forget to turn your microphones off.